Herzlich willkommen, liebe Kolleginnen, liebe Kollegen, in der Bundespressekonferenz. Wir begrüßen bei uns Joshua Wong aus Hongkong. Er ist Generalsekretär der Protestorganisation Demosisto. An seiner Seite ist Chang Ching-Kwong. Sie ist ebenfalls Aktivistin aus Hongkong, steht ebenfalls für Fragen zur Verfügung. Joshua Wong wird am Anfang eine Einleitung geben auf Englisch. Wir hatten gehofft, dass wir eine Übersetzung bekommen. Das hat leider nicht funktioniert. Das heißt, Joshua Wong wird auf Englisch sprechen. Ich hoffe, Sie sind in der Lage, alle das zu verstehen. Und dann gibt es natürlich die Gelegenheit, Ihre Fragen zu stellen. Joshua, welcome to the Bundespressekonferenz. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation from Federal Press Conference. Good morning, Berlin. May I begin by expressing gratitude and thanks to our friends in Germany. In the past 2 days, I feel enormously how people in Berlin are standing with us in Hong Kong. The air of freedom I breathe here, instead of irritative smell of tear gas, remind me of how important it is for me to share the thoughts of people attending the ongoing protests in Hong Kong right now and over the past 14 weeks. Last week, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam had announced a full withdrawal of the extradition bill. We believe it is kind of mere tactics, aimed to buy time and paint an illusion of peace before China's National Day in October. A lot of people start with this question: why are protesters still on streets? However, if we look at the past 14 weeks, the people of Hong Kong have actually paid a substantial price for this tiny step. More than 1,200 protesters have been arrested over the past 3 months. With brutal and excessive force used by police, 8 Hong Kongers took their own life to show their conviction to the cause. 2 young professionals lost some of their eyesight due to police brutality. Having come at such a large expense, it's unrealistic to call it a victory. In the course of the last 3 months, we have exhausted every peaceful means of expressing our discontent. But the situation eroded so quickly that what we are facing now, an increasingly barbaric level of force used by those riot police in Hong Kong with the crackdown of human rights. On 31 of August, police stormed into a train compartment with batons and pepper spray, randomly attacking innocent passersby who were returning home after dinner. In another metro station, the police fired at a close distance at protesters who are leaving the site. What is worse, they hinder the injured from receiving medical aid on various occasions, denying first aider requests to provide medical support for those in need and even arrested patients in public hospital. The following days, a few metro stations were closed and police took over the station like the public transport police in Berlin in the 1960s. Yesterday, Hong Kong riot police was even allowed to carry extendable batons while off duty. Carrie Lam and her administration turned a blind eye to the police brutality of the past few months. The number of arrested and injured themselves may seem solid and cold, but those are the friends and family that we love and care about. After seeing your friends die, your family injured, withdrawal of the bill is far from enough. I hope to express our worrying concern in particular over police abuse of power. In late August, I attended an assembly called Protest 2 in central of Hong Kong in support of lots of protesters, lots of female activists who were sexually harassed by Hong Kong police in the course of demonstration and assembly during arrest and detention. Testimony from various female protesters reflect that male police officers would crowd on their body during the arrest, which the force they employed was wholly unnecessary. Besides, lawyers have reported the body strip search on arrested female protesters were actually conducted by male police officers. Some of these calls are captured and documented by journalists, but many more will happen closed door and without cameras. So with what I've mentioned, unsurprisingly, denied by the Hong Kong authorities at groundless, that I would still urge Germany and European countries to condemn those acts by Hong Kong riot police. Especially, we hope people could realize that how the power imbalance between an arrested person and a state-empowered police officers. We are aware of the fact that this power abuse went up to an excessive level as the Hong Kong authorities make up of those political crises. When I appreciate my friend who dared to speak up after suffering these terrifying encounters, I feel obligated to emphasize our demand to an independent inquiry into the police brutality and power abuse. By looking at abuse, investigating police who work against the law, it is the only practical and reasonable solution to prevent Hong Kong from being a police state, and above all, to restore real trust between the people and the government. There's another reason, under a greater context, the protests in Hong Kong are not likely to stop because we are still fighting for our fundamental rights and democracy. Free election is the basic civil rights and freedom written in our Constitution and the Sino-British Joint Declaration. But those promises are not fulfilled by Beijing. They just conduct hardline suppression. My colleague from Demosisto, Nathan Law, who was the youngest ever lawmaker in Hong Kong history, was disqualified and kicked out of the parliament 2 years ago. Later, Agnes Chow was also disqualified from running for office in our legislature because of the political affiliation and political censorship. Edward Leung, Andy Chan, and many others are also disqualified as candidates because of their political stance. In the past 3 years, altogether 6 elected legislators are disqualified for ridiculous reasons and led to an suppression and reinterpretation of the Constitution of Hong Kong by Beijing. We were told to enter the system and change it from within it. We did try, yet the Hong Kong and Beijing government require our compromise. Political censorship and restriction of freedom of speech have just turned the entire young generation into dissidents. If we stop protesting now, no one will be able to hold President Xi, Carrie Lam, and the government responsible for their wrongdoings, human rights violation, and police brutality. Carrie Lam, the leader of Hong Kong, announced a full withdrawal of the extradition bill last week, but it is not far more than enough. They just continue to tighten Hong Kong's people's freedom. Just make it clear, our right to be elected are already eroded. The system itself is also being suppressed, and it looks nearly impossible to propose a change from within. But if we stop our pursuit and determination of democracy now and let Carrie Lam succeed, international attention on Hong Kong protests might fade out, and political suppression will take place and continue in the future. From my point of view, it's easy to explain why people in Germany or Europe should care about Hong Kong. The political and economic freedom of Hong Kong has a lot to do with the European community as well. We understand that Hong Kong is a global financial center. We are closely tied with the world economy. This is one of the reasons why the world should pay attention to Hong Kong's situation. It would greatly affect the economic interests of multiple stakeholders. If, for example, Carrie Lam were execute our city emergency regulation ordinance, or if Chinese troops and tanks were sent or are sent to central business district of Hong Kong. The city's role as a financial and trade hub would just fade the nightmare. Hong Kong can also serve as a story to learn from. We were unaware of the Chinese regime intention to gain influence and control over our economy in the early years. And our economy now is to some extent to rely on China, which makes our battle of freedom and democracy harder. Now, China used the Belt and Road Initiative as the way to increase and expand its economic influence and political gain, not only in Hong Kong, China, Asia Pacific, but even in Europe. It makes use of that to hold stake in foreign capitalists to its wish and demands. And with the extent of influence in Europe with direct investment, I just hope people around Europe, people who live in Germany, can pay attention to how Hong Kong people stand in the front line to confront the authoritarian suppression. Many would say, I'm over-worrying or being too spectacle about China. But the truth is China is known for not playing by the rules and with the worst and ridiculous track record for its human rights violation. The failure of one country, two system, or the erosion of one country, two system to one country and 1.5 system in Hong Kong is just present how China do not rely on the international treaty since 1984. Besides, we're also aware that the crackdown of human rights not only in Hong Kong or Taiwan, but also in Xinjiang or Tibet. We just hope people to aware that how Hong Kong is the global city under the rule of Beijing, but we never keep silence and we continue our battle. To sum up, I sincerely urge your support for Hong Kong and stand with us by considering the following item. Apart from issuing statement to condemn the authorities, Germany should immediately suspend the sale and export of riot weapons to Hong Kong police. Germany should also suspend trade negotiation with China and Hong Kong until human rights issue is put on the agenda, and should consider enacting laws that set standards for companies operating in Xinjiang and sanction those that fail to live up to European ideals of human rights. Finally, I understand that business leaders and politicians in Germany worry that if they directly confront China on its human rights abuse, it would jeopardize future deals. And the finance minister yesterday called for an agreement between Sino-US trade dispute after business delegation visit China. I sincerely wish that Germany will also be trustful to the promise that European Union has made. EU have pledged themselves to defend and advocate for human rights in neighboring countries and the world, and promise to never directly or indirectly encourage human rights violation. I wish Germany and the rest of the free world should refrain from turning a blind eye to what's happening in Hong Kong. Our position is clear. Hong Kong people are defending not only the civil liberties, democratic value, and economic freedom of our hometown that being recognized as international city. Standing up against the largest authoritarian regime after the Cold War, the people of Hong Kong are facing more and more difficulties, especially with the increase of police brutality. We shall continue our fight for democracy and freedom because we don't accept Hong Kong transformed to be a police state. We're strongly aware Hong Kong is the new Berlin in the new Cold War. I appeal to you to stand with people of Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. So now there is time for your questions. Ich habe 3 Fragen schon notiert, dann Tofi Niernig, dann Klaus Remme, Thilo Jung, dann die Kollegin hier vorne, so fangen wir an. Klaus Remme, bitte.
Mr. Wong, I understand that you're talking to a great number of people while you are in Berlin. I wonder whether you are disappointed that there will not be, as I understand it, a meeting with Angela Merkel. And my question would be, did you try to arrange this meeting or maybe talk to anyone else at the Chancellery? And in terms of content, I'd like to know more about your idea of Hong Kong being the new Berlin, if you could talk about this.
Darf ich kurz zur Erklärung sagen, normalerweise haben wir hier die Regel, Fragen auf Deutsch zu stellen. Das halten wir normalerweise durch, weil wir jetzt heute keine Übersetzung haben. Mache ich davon eine Ausnahme, please.
This is my first trip to Germany. Originally, I planned to spend 4 days at Berlin, but with the detention and arrest by Hong Kong police at the Hong Kong International Airport, it's just caused whole of my schedule need to have certain rearrangement. Of course, it would be good to have any chance to put in touch with the office of the Chancellor, but it's also my honor and pleasure to get the chance on Monday evening to meet with the Foreign Minister. We're strongly aware Hong Kong is under the authoritarian rule and how Hong Kong people stand on the front line. Why I would say Hong Kong is the new Berlin in the new Cold War, especially, I think the reason behind is we're strongly aware Hong Kong people identify ourselves as the frontier to against authoritarian rule of Beijing. In the past, people may say, yesterday Xinjiang, Tibet, today Hong Kong, tomorrow Taiwan. With the Belt and Road Initiative and the expansion of sharp power in not only Asian Pacific, but even European countries, how Hong Kong people will bear the responsibility, let the world to know that we confront authoritarian suppression.
Zusatzfrage.
Yeah, eine Nachfrage. So I asked about your effort to reach out. So again, did you try to arrange a meeting and what kind of response did you get?
Okay. For my trip to Germany, I mainly targeted and scheduled meetings with different MPs because we have to seek for bipartisan support. Before this trip or before departing Hong Kong, we have the idea to mainly target it and also focus on lobbying MPs. So I hope next time when I come to Germany, visit Berlin, it would be great to have a chance to meet with anyone from the office of the foreign minister or even the chancellor.
Danke. Thilo Jung mit der nächsten Frage.
Mr. Wong, 2 questions. First of all, what makes you think Beijing would compromise with you guys in any way?
3 decades ago, no one expected Soviet Union will fall. No one predicted the Berlin Wall will fall. With our passion and determination, we just hope to let the world to aware that Hong Kong people deserve democracy. Someone blame me as separatist, but just make it clear. Hong Kong people are asking for election system reform. We just hope to elect our own government. We just hope to elect the chief executive of Hong Kong. Before the transfer of sovereignty in 1997, Beijing promised to let Hong Kong people enjoy the right of free election. That's the promise made in Hong Kong's mini-constitution and also the Sino-British Joint Declaration registered in the United Nations. So we will continue our fight until the day we enjoy democracy.
I understand that, but I want to understand why you think Beijing would compromise with you in any way. They're one of the most powerful nations in the world. Unlike the Soviet Union, they're on the upswing. Their economy is strong. There's no way Germany will cut any ties with their biggest trade partners. So why would you think they would compromise with you?
3 months ago, no one assumed or predict Beijing or Hong Kong government will withdraw the extradition bill. But with the power of people, we let the dream come true. It's the remarkable achievement, but not a victory. So we will continue our fight. And of course, we know for world leaders, they might have lots of hesitation or consideration or political burden when they need to send such a clear message to President Xi Jinping. But just like how the G7 summit has issued a joint statement to recognize the importance of the Sino-British Joint Declaration that being blamed by Beijing said the international treaty fade out already. So I have no hope towards the regime, but I have hope towards people.
So, ich würde gerne kurz zur Geschäftsordnung, da wir hier für volle Transparenz sind, haben wir einen dritten Gast auf dem Podium, zu spät gekommen, Wong Yik-mo, gehört auch zur Organisation Demosisto, ist auch als Übersetzer gegebenenfalls noch mit hierher gekommen. Wong Yik-mo. Nächste Frage, die Kollegin hier vorne, und dann gehen wir rüber auf die rechte Seite. Bitte.
Morning. Are you disappointed that Germany is not doing maybe more, not already? I mean, you met with the foreign minister, but are you, even though you did not hope or did not organize a meeting or didn't try to organize a meeting with Merkel, were you hoping of some sort of gesture somehow, or that even when she was in China recently, were you hoping that she would somehow talk to the Chinese leaders and maybe that way support you? So are you disappointed over Germany in general? And also, after that, after Germany, you'll go to the US. After that, what is your travel plans? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. It's really a good move for the Chancellor to show her concern on Hong Kong's protest during her visit to Beijing. We're strongly aware that apart from only showing concern or showing the care on Hong Kong's strike, we strongly hope in the future, European Union, when they need to make trade negotiation with China, they could add human rights costs related to Hong Kong protests. Especially, we're strongly aware that it's time to let President Xi Jinping or Emperor Xi Jinping to learn a lesson. It's time to respect on the voice of people and respect on the international rules. So what I hope is, apart from issuing statement to showing support on Hong Kong's democratization, is also a good trend and a must to add human rights causes. Apart from it, we also hope Germany government could suspend and even stop the export of riot weapons to Hong Kong police, especially how we experience the police brutality. Respond to the question of US, next week I will travel to Washington, D.C., and we hope to push forward the Congress to pass the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, and now is the time for the free world to stand with Hong Kong.
Dann gehen wir auf die rechte Seite, bitte.
Very good morning. Alfred Schmidt, German Radio ARD. I'd be interested in your demands, actually, you at Demosisto and other organizers of protests and demonstrations. Would it be possible, do you think, to extend those demands onto other aspects, like, for instance, change cartel rights in Hong Kong, which would possibly and likely undermine the power of Hong Kong tycoons? Or do you think you're going to be concentrating on free elections and the other demands of that catalogue of 5 points you've been establishing so far?
With the 5 demands raised by a Hong Kong protester, the ultimate goal is to enjoy the rights of free election. As we know that the chief executive of Hong Kong is now handpicked by Beijing instead of elected by people. Half of the seat of the Hong Kong Legislative Council is owned and controlled by Beijing with selection instead of election. So the first step is to have free election and let the voice of Hong Kong people being heard inside of the institution instead of only having the way out to organize protests on the street. We hope to let the voice of Hong Kong people enter the institution instead of our voice is being dominated by Beijing. So free election is the first step.
For the problems of cartels and big tycoons in Hong Kong, our view is that this problem has to be solved either via cartel laws or other regulations. Because we can see from Hong Kong Airways, Cathay Pacific Airways in Hong Kong, it's highly reliable on flights to China, or it's highly under the influence of China. And recently, it has sacked off more than dozens of its crew, its pilots, its flight attendants, because the Chinese authorities threatening it if you want your flights to be able to fly through Chinese territory. or being able to enter China, you will have to make sure that your employees is complying with the Chinese regime. That's why Cathay Pacific Airways is encouraging its employees to turn against each other, to report your coworkers if they are participating or showing support to the protest. And it's a very serious problem. So we really see that tycoons or cartels, these kind of problems has to be solved, because usually they have had close ties with the Chinese government. And the Chinese government would not hesitate to use its economic power to gain political leverage. And this could also happen to Germany and Europe. Now, China, it's directly investing a lot of imports in different infrastructures or companies, and Greece in many of the European countries. And I truly believe that the Chinese authorities would be very eager to use its influence in the economic sector in the European Union to gain more political leverage in terms of within like trade wars or different conflict that may happen in the future with the European Union and between European Union and China. So I urge the European world and the Western world to be aware of this threat that China may pose, so that we can react faster, because Hong Kong is already suffering from this kind of situation. We don't hope that any other places in the world would be suffering from the same condition as well.
Bitte, bitte, ja.
Yeah, Thorsten Rieke, Germany's Business Daily Handelsblatt. I have two questions. First, do you see any need to distance yourself from the violence of the protests? We have also seen pictures of violence from both sides, so do you see any need to that, and why haven't you so far? The other question is in relates to claims from Beijing that there is foreign influence on the protesters in Hong Kong. So I was wondering whether you could tell us whether the movement is in connection with the US or other Western powers. Thank you.
No one would love to see clash and violence happen in Hong Kong during every weekend in the past 3 months. But instead of criticizing or blaming on activists, the only question that I would love to ask is, where is President Xi and Carrie Lam? Two of them just stay behind of riot police, refuse to conduct any kind of political system reform. I admit that force were used by protesters, but we all know that political crisis must solve by political system reform. No matter set up investigation commission on police brutality, or respond to our calls on election system reform. We all aware it's time to remind those leaders and the authorities to be responsible and accountable, listen to the voice of people. That's why I hope people got aware that now Hong Kong people are just asking for the fundamental right. In fact, it's hard for everyone in Hong Kong or everyone around the world 100% agree on all the behavior of protesters in the past 3 months. But we all understand that the only way out is putting pressure on Beijing, because Hong Kong government is not the decision maker. So Beijing should respond to a voice of Hong Kong people, especially protests will continue until 1st of October, the China's National Day. Refer to the question of foreign force. We strongly recognize Hong Kong is the global city. Perhaps political freedom in Hong Kong might depend on Beijing, especially under the hardline suppression and how they tighten Hong Kong's autonomy. But economic freedom of Hong Kong might be more depends on the Western country, just like how countries around the world recognize Hong Kong as a separate economic entity. So I believe different international communities leaders, they might have a say on Hong Kong's future and how to safeguard Hong Kong's political and economic freedom. Of course, there might be rumors to say that, oh, Joshua is trained by US Marine, or even I am one of the CIA agents. I refer to government-funded newspaper in Hong Kong. But just let us make it clear, Hong Kong people will continue to fight for democracy, and we are the one responsible for our fight. But we hope world allies can stand with us. Let us never walk alone.
Bitte Ihre Frage und dann die Kollegin auf der rechten Seite.
Mentioned the export of riot weapons. Could you give us some more details on that? What kind of weapons have been sold to Hong Kong from Germany, and perhaps you can even name some producers?
Refer to the riot police weapon export from Germany to Hong Kong. After this press conference, and of course I can send you the list of those weapons because our research team already conducts several research related to it. But what we realize is no matter UK, US, and Germany, they have the experience to export those crowd control equipment or riot police weapons to Hong Kong. Refer to the situation in UK. The Foreign Minister of UK government announced to stop the export license on the late of June until Hong Kong government conduct investigation on police brutality. European Parliament also passed a resolution on late of July to urge European countries not to export those weapons to Hong Kong police. We're also aware how US government having several discussions and different congressmen and senators, including Speaker Pelosi, urge US government not to export the weapon. And for the situation of Germany, we also are aware how the beanbag rounds rifles and those bullets were sold from Germany to Hong Kong. And part of the water tanks, the water cannon, is also produced and made in Germany. So I think it's time for the free world to be responsible for the police brutality in Hong Kong. They should not be the supporters of Hong Kong riot police.
Bitte, Ihre Frage und dann hatte ich hier vorne Ihre Frage notiert. Bitte.
Melissa Eddy from the New York Times. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, you just mentioned Speaker Pelosi, but who else do you plan to speak to in Washington? And are you going anywhere else in the United States? Thanks.
On this Friday, I will visit and meet with several chief editors of different newspapers at New York City. Next Tuesday, I am invited by Senator Rubio and Congressman James McGovern to join the China's Commission hearing on the Summer of Discontent in Hong Kong. We hope to seek for bipartisan support because Hong Kong people are strongly aware that stand with Hong Kong is not the matter of left or right, it's the matter of right or wrong. That's the reason we hope to seek for bipartisan politicians, no matter from the Democrats or the Republicans, they could really show their support to Hong Kong's democratization. And we are arranging different meetings. We also hope to have the chance to meet with government officials, and we hope we can announce several meetings and our itinerary around early next week.
Bitte Ihre Frage, dann gehen wir da in den Bereich. Thilo Jung ist auch noch in der zweiten Frage dran. Bitte Ihre Frage.
Dino, Italian press agency, ANSA. My question to Mr. Wong is, don't you think that US support to your movement could be a kind of weakness for you and for the protesters in Hong Kong?
Okay. Without the upcoming presidential election in Taiwan, which is next year, January, without the trade war tension between US and China, without the Brexit issue and China need to make friends with Germany or other European countries, will Hong Kong government or Beijing really accept to fully withdraw the bill? I doubt on it. I would say that how Hong Kong being recognized as a global city, the direction and the motivation for us to travel abroad to seek for international community support is we hope to get people around the world, no matter they come from US, they come from UK, or now it's under which administration in US or etc., or people live in Germany or other European country. What we hope is stand with Hong Kong, support free election. It will be the majority consensus of the free world.
Bitte, Ihre Frage.
Zlatko Pečinić for RT Germany. Mr. Wong, you already mentioned the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act in the US. Would you say that this is an attempt to foreign meddling in Hong Kong? This is my first question. And my second question, you also mentioned expressions like frontline, frontier, and I also saw on Twitter, for example, from other protesters who tell that this is a war. Would you say that you are at war with China?
we strongly experience Hong Kong is the frontline battlefield to confront authoritarian suppression, especially under the political context of trade war in the international or global level. Hong Kong, why is still being recognized as the international financial center? Part of the reason is how the US Hong Kong Policy Act passed on 1992 expressed and recognized Hong Kong as the separate economic entity. And now, with the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, it could allow and authorize US President to freeze the access or deny the entry of any government official suppressed on Hong Kong's people's freedom and autonomy. Of course, we're strongly aware that in such international dynamics or complicated international relation, people around the world might have different kind of hesitation or consideration for seeking support around the world. But we just hope people to realize that why Hong Kong is now being recognized as special administration region with one country, two system is all because of the international treaty, which means joint declaration. So when how the international treaty is not being respected by Beijing, and Beijing authorities even claim that the joint declaration is invalid, it's time for us to seek for international community support.
Danke. Dann gehen wir in die letzte Reihe, bitte. Moment, doch, müsste eigentlich eins sein, aber da müsste eigentlich ein Mikro jetzt an sein.
Oh.
Einfach ein bisschen nach vorne beugen.
This is awkward. Just to ask, with the government asking for dialogue right now and the protesters like yourself still insisting on demands being fulfilled like universal suffrage, do you see any common ground, any way out of this crisis? Is there a compromise possible? And also the protesters have recently become, there's been more violence in the protests. Do you see this as necessary or helping your cause, or does it hurt your cause? Thanks.
Pro-democratic camp lawmakers sent an open letter to Carrie Lam since 1st of July and asked for kind of open dialogue or meeting with the leaders of Hong Kong. But from 1st of July till now, Carrie Lam didn't reply that letter and refused to have any kind of dialogue. And it's really ironic. Finally, Hong Kong government or Beijing government withdraw the bill without having any kind of dialogue. We just hope to make it clear and let people be aware that pro-democratic camp from the side of protesters already raised and sent the invitation to Carrie Lam and asked for a dialogue 3 months ago already. But from 1st of July till now, around first week of September, Hong Kong government is only responsible and accountable and listen to the voice of Beijing authorities instead of listening to the voice of protesters. Okay. Compared to 5 years ago, we strongly experienced the life-threatening weapon used by Hong Kong police. 5 years ago, Hong Kong riot police fired 89 tear gas, but now they fire more than 2,000. Within the last 3 months, Hong Kong government arrested at least 1,200 citizens. The oldest one at the age of 63, the youngest one at the age of 12. Who can imagine 12 years old primary school kid will be arrested by Hong Kong riot police just because of the peaceful act? I just hope people around the world could understand that violence and clash, happen or not, is much more depends on the side of police instead of the side of protester. On 18th of August, 1.7 million Hong Kong citizens joined the unauthorized and unlawful rally peacefully without any clash and violence because riot police didn't storm into the crowd. So in Hong Kong, we always say that no police, we have peace. And we all know that instead of how President Xi allowing a clash happen every weekend or even every day and to have the indiscriminately attack or arrest the people. Why don't solve the political crisis by political system reform? That's the question I really love to ask President Xi.
Ihre Frage dann Thilo Jung. Dann Herr Toffinier. Moment, jetzt.
Denise Rees, news agency Rapidly. I want to confer to the latest events in Hong Kong on Sunday. Thousands of protesters marched to the General Consulate in Hong Kong, demanding or calling for President Trump to liberate Hong Kong. Could you elaborate on what level of intervention you seek from the US government, and do you truly believe that Trump could be a good ally to your cause?
We are not seeking any world leaders or any country to interfere in Hong Kong's protests, but it's a must for the free world to support Hong Kong's democratization. The goal and the demand of the protests on last Sunday is not, formally speaking, liberate Hong Kong. It's urging US to pass and execute the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. Of course, on Sunday, in fact, I was still being detained inside police station, and I can't join the protest. But I think even some of the protesters voiced out the slogan of Free Hong Kong or Liberate Hong Kong. We all know that. We just hope countries around the world could, through, instead of issuing statement, they could have concrete action to support Hong Kong people. Passing Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act is really a good move. So what we hope is for world leaders and countries around the world, actions speak louder than words. And it's a must for them to stand with Hong Kong, especially we are under the crackdown of human rights. But I just have to clarify, liberate Hong Kong or free Hong Kong are the slogan in the demonstration and rally on last Sunday with more than 100,000 participants. But our main goal and demand on the protest is to pass the bill.
Herr Jung.
Ms. Wong, Mr. Wong, big picture question. I mean, I understand your demands for more than 7 million people in Hong Kong, but I'm sure you also consider yourself a citizen of China, not a part of the regime, but a citizen of China. What is your dream for China mainland? Do you want to get rid of the regime of this dictatorship? What is your dream? I know what you want for Hong Kong. Okay. Do you want to get rid of Xi, of the Communist Party, of the dictatorship?
Fight for democracy is an uphill battle, especially under the rule of Beijing suppression. I hope one day not only Hong Kong people, but also people in mainland China can enjoy freedom and democracy. I'm not sure how many days, months, or year it takes for us until the day come with democracy and freedom. But we will continue our fight. I think how more than 2 million people in Hong Kong took to the street on 16th of June when I was still in prison is really remarkable. More than 1/4 of the population took to the street with our discontent of hardline suppression, which just proved that even ethnically Chinese or Hong Konger are the ones deserve democracy. So I hope one day, not only Hong Kong, but also mainland China people can enjoy human rights and freedom. And no one need to immigrate to other country and worrying the one country, two system in the worst scenario will turn to one country, one system.
Human rights and democracy are fundamental human rights that everybody should have, no matter you're Africans, Chinese, Hong Kongers, or anything. I myself would first and foremost identify myself as a Hong Konger because I live and grew up in Hong Kong. And I would say before China can have democracy or freedom, the first thing they have to have is information free flow. Behind the Great Firewall, it's in no way that Chinese people can know what is actually happening in the real world. They are blocked from knowing the truth. And this is a very serious problem before anything could change or anything could happen in China. Because without adequate knowledge to anything or any truth, it is impossible to push or advocate for any changes in China. So I think it's very important to first make sure that information could flow freely in China first, because this is a fundamental step for any systematic or political changes. People need to have the right to know what is actually happening in the world, instead of receiving designed or propaganda messages from the government.
And how do you do that?
As far as I know, many Hong Kongers are now doing promotion campaigns targeting at China. For example, because there is a very serious copyright situation throughout the world that people download movies or music from online that is illegal, right? So people are now turning promotion materials and renaming the file as something like a movie that you can download from online. So when the Chinese people click on the download link, they're actually not downloading the movie that they intended to download, but they are now looking at the designs, graphics that we made to promote what is happening in Hong Kong. And I know that there are a lot of Chinese who are able to use VPN or other things to access Facebook or other social media, as the Chinese foreign minister has officially said that the Chinese have a right to speak on Facebook, so that Facebook shouldn't delete their accounts or comments or something like that. So I believe that there are chances for them to know and see the real picture of what is happening, but it also the world needs and we need to do more promotion, and I don't think hatred or merely trolling each other online would help the situation. We need a rational discussion and we need more promotion.
One point I would like to add is, first is Hong Kong and next is mainland China. Under the rule of Beijing hardline suppression, Hong Kong must and should be the first place, finally, can enjoy freedom and democracy. The most difficult challenge for us to seeking people's in mainland China support is the information censorship and the Great Firewall. But with our propaganda and our promotion campaign with simplified Chinese and Mandarin, we hope to seek for more and more people who live in mainland China could recognize the importance of universal value and freedom. 3 decades ago, we are aware how the Berlin Wall fall, and I hope in the future, the Great Firewall in China will fall and let people know what's meant by truth and universal value.
Herr Toffinier, dann nochmal nach rechts. Bitte.
Mr. Wong, you mentioned your meeting with the German foreign minister last night. Could you elaborate on the content of those talks, and did you also make these demands that you just listed to him with regards to what Germany has to do? And the second question, this goes to both of you. You also talked that several of the protesters were killed. Are you ready to die for your cause?
2 days ago in the evening, the first appointment for me after I arrived airport at Berlin, it's really my pleasure and honor to meet with the foreign minister. I emphasize on what's happening in Hong Kong under the threat of emergency ordinance and how the troops moved to the border a few weeks ago. Of course, people in this room are strongly aware what is meant by the troops move to the border, and it's a must for world leaders to prevent bloodshed or Tiananmen Square massacre happening in Hong Kong. At the same time, emergency ordinance is similar as martial law, which authorized Hong Kong government to shut down the internet, cut the public transport and the air traffic. So I just emphasize and hope to let the foreign minister to aware that how to safeguard Hong Kong political and economic freedom to guarantee Hong Kong still being recognized as the place with stability and prosperity, especially as the global financial center. That's not only our responsibility, but also the world's responsibility.
Did you, again, my question, did you make these specific demands you just mentioned today at the press conference?
Yeah.
Did you make these specific demands to the German foreign minister?
I make the specific demand to urge them send a clear message to President Xi Jinping. Sending troops to Hong Kong or execute emergency ordinance is not the way out, and it's a must to add human rights costs in the trade negotiation. Thank you.
As for the question about are we or am I ready to die for the cause that we are now going after, I would say after seeing fellow protesters and fellow Hong Kongers committed suicide to protest against the bill, seeing friends injured, seeing families being scared, I would say I am ready for all the consequences that may come with the fight that we are now in. Seeing 12-year-old kids have to be on the front line facing police batons and police brutality, it breaks my heart I think for both of us, to be fair, that we were not able to give them a better Hong Kong or a better society that they can live happily inside and can grow prosperously. That's why we are here and we are trying to get more attention to Hong Kong, and we really want freedom and democracy for Hong Kong. And I really hope that I don't have to of course, I treasure my life and my families and my friends, but if it's up to me, if my death or our death, it's gonna be able to help with anything, I think I would accept this consequence.
Bitte.
Yes, could you please tell us how Demosisto finances itself and who pays for your travels?
Okay, for my trip to, last week I traveled to Taiwan, and this week I traveled to Germany, and next week to Washington, D.C. Demosisto is found on 2016 with our crowdfunding campaign and how lots of Hong Kong people show their support to us with the donation. It really impressed us and encouraged us to continue our battle. So no matter how I was invited by one of the media, invited by Blit, and how they invite me come to Berlin, and also how Demosisto cover my etiquette. And I think it really showed that how Hong Kong people, we never walk alone. Because especially lots of Hong Kong people, we all aware that under the chilling effects and the white terror, even some of those professionals or middle class, it might be difficult for them to stand on the front line. But with the crowdfunding campaign and donation, they still show the support to the youngster that we continue our international advocacy.
Danke, Herr Wong. Danke, Frau Kwong. Thank you very much. Damit sind wir am Ende dieser Pressekonferenz. Gute Reise.